Hello everyone and welcome to what is probably going to be our last video for quite some time. Oh, sorry, still lit up. Anyway, never mind, I'll be back again in September to do some more work with you. It's going to be the 11th of September as far as we know. Okay, if it changes, we'll put some message up for you. We're going to do some work today on a moonlit scene. A moonlit scene. It's been quite difficult to find a moonlit scene for you, but I want to show you a couple of famous artists first, and I can't talk about moonlit scenes without showing you this particular artist here, who's just ready to come up. There we are. No, this one I want to show you. There we are. This is by Monet, and this is the painting that the Impressionist movement is actually named after. And there on the screen, you can see the way he's putting reflections of the sun. I know it's not the moon, the sun into the sky, and he's sketched in the background very, very faintly. That's a really important picture. And this one, come on, this one here of the Houses of Parliament. I think it's strange that Monet painted the Houses of Parliament. What's he doing in England? He's a Frenchman. They didn't think they let them in here. Anyway, you can see the sunrise there coming up, and it's almost burning into the Thames there with wonderful colours there. Wonderful. And the last picture I want to show you is this one by Van Gogh. And I wanted to show you this because it shows you how Van Gogh is putting reflections into the water. And it's not bad at all. I'd give it a few quid for that one. Okay, so moonlit scenes. I've got an artist here who's going to show you how to paint a moonlit scene. He's a bit rough and ready, and he insists on doing it in 10 minutes, which I think is a shame, because if he took a bit longer of it, it would be a much better painting. And I'm sure when you look at it, you'll think to yourself, I can do better than that, and I'm certain you can. Okay, so have a look at what he does and see what you think.
Artist's Loft, and a mixture of paint including primary blue, titanium white, and black, all of which by Liquitex Basics. All of the tools will be listed in the description box. With that being said, I'm using this large square-headed brush because it can cover a very large surface area and hold a good amount of paint. This is important when you want to render a large sky with acrylics because the paints do dry quickly, so you need to get a lot of paint on there and blend it smoothly in a rather fast amount of time. So once I have that applied and fairly smooth, I'm going to go down to the stream or river here at the bottom of the painting. I'm going to apply the pigment here predominantly in horizontal strokes, and as you can see, as the stream descends into the background, it gets smaller and smaller, it tapers inwards, and that's because that is how perception works. As things get closer to us, they seem larger and larger. As they get farther away, they seem smaller and smaller. So it's important to have your stream kind of taper in that manner. I also have it jetting to the right and left just to add some extra interest and intricacy. Then I'm taking some additional titanium white and primary blue, adding it to the top center of our sky where our moon is eventually going to be. Left a very subtle effect, but subtlety in painting can really do a lot and add up. So with that being said, I'm now taking a medium-sized square-headed brush and beginning to implement some mountains in the background. Now these don't have a lot of detail and they don't have a lot of color because I don't want them distracting from anything in our foreground. Generally you want to simplify your background so that your foreground can really stand out so that it doesn't steal the eye or attention. And with that in mind, I applied it that way. None of the mountains are the exact same size or shape. It's important to ensure that they are inconsistent in a way because nature is always rendering things in different ways. It's not man-made. It's not like every building is going to look the same. So with that being said, I'm now creating a little tree line with a darker version of that same color. I'm using a square-headed brush and doing a tapping effect to ensure that I get this litany of different little implications of trees in the background. And then I'm taking my large square-headed brush, mixing the colors from said trees and the previously applied mountains, and just blocking in that area. I'm going to apply a tree in the foreground over that area, so I'm not really worried about it. I'm just creating a fairly consistent background color. Then I'm taking these colors that I'm using in the trees and mountains and just blocking in where I might want to put a tree in later. You don't have to do this. I just thought I'd show you that I was doing it, and I'm using those same colors to ensure that the painting remains very cohesive. Then, again, on the note of cohesive, I'm taking that, a fairly similar color to what I was using before, and adding a little bit of green in it. for the grass and the field area here. It's very dark, so you want it to be desaturated, but really the mixture of paint here is a good amount of black, a tiny bit of white to desaturate it, then a mixture of primary blue and primary yellow, which make a green. The entire painting here, I believe, is actually completed in only 5 colors, which is great because it ensures that your painting remains cohesive in color, and you don't have to break the bank buying so many colors. You can do a lot with a little, and that's something I really try to show you in these painting tutorials. So here I'm just continuing to map in all of that green, and as you can see, because the acrylic paint is very wet, it's very reflective, and that makes it difficult to work with. Sometimes you can be doing everything right, and it might not look right because it is still wet. So I'm going to let this dry and show you what it looks like then so that we have a better understanding. So that's going to happen in 3, 2, 1, bam. Okay, I wasn't sure if it was going to happen, but I'm glad that worked. As you can see, we have a much better understanding of the colors that we're using, and I just wanted to extend my water out a little bit. Thankfully, acrylic paint dries very quickly, and now I'm just taking that same blue that I was using for the water and the sky and applying that down into this middle area. And I'm just expanding this to ensure that when I paint in my reflections, I have a good amount of room to do so. So it's all looking kind of basic right now, and that is a-okay. Generally, paintings don't really work until the end. It's that final 10% that really makes them look special, so just bear with me here. But right now, I'm creating a separation in the water and the land with a small square-headed brush and a mixture of primary blue and titanium white. Then I'm taking a very similar white and I'm applying it into the top of the sky for my moon. Then, in horizontal strokes, I'm applying that reflection from said moon into the water. What's really important here is that you apply the paint fairly softly. And that's because if you apply it very hard, it's going to blend in. You're going to push the paint about, and you're not going to get a very natural pigment. You want to be soft with your application so that you get that pure paint pigment in the middle. Then as you get towards the edges, you can kind of blend it out to the right and to the left. That way, that middle color, it's very dense, it's very bright, it's not transparent, and then as you get to the edges, it feathers out and it becomes a little bit darker, it blends in with the blue more, and it just looks so much more natural in the process. So just remember to be very soft with the middle, almost don't go back and touch the middle, but blend both the left and the right sides of the water out. Then I'm going to take another very small square-headed brush and begin to map in a couple of trees in the foreground. Now these trees are very close to us, and so they are going to appear much larger because again that is how perspective works, right? As things get larger, or as things get closer in the foreground, they look much larger. We have a tree line in the background, but it looks incredibly small because it is so far away. I'm trying to ensure that all of these trees are fairly different, and I have a good amount of water on my brush to ensure that they go on very softly, very cleanly. It's not breaking apart. Then I'm taking a very old square-headed brush, the bristles kind of leaf off in varying directions to create inconsistency, and with a tapping motion I'm applying a litany of leaves. Now these are implied, and it's just a very quick way of getting on a lot of detail, and it's ensuring that each patch of cluster of leaves looks very different from the one next to it. I'm slightly rotating my brush as I'm moving it in the air to the next area to ensure that there is this different intricacy, and it's just a very quick, efficient way of rendering just a plethora of foliage in your painting. You can also use a lot of additional paint there because it's in the foreground, and you can get some extra texture there. It's great for adding additional detail and depth in your painting. Then I'm making the top right corner a little bit darker just to create a little bit of a vignette and draw the eye into the middle of the painting where you want the viewer's eye. Again, great for depth, great for all of that. From there, I'm going to take a very small liner brush and or round-headed brush, and using some titanium white, some primary yellow, and some primary red, I'm going to apply a good number of dots, squares, rectangles, all of the above, and create this really nice warm city in the background, this beautiful inviting light. The idea that you can kind of canoe down this river here and end up there. Painting is very much about storytelling, and you can kind of lead the viewer through the painting. It's such a beautiful thing, and it will really help invoke emotion. So that's just what we're doing here. We're creating little paths of light, and then I'm also creating reflections from it using those same colors. I'm just applying it at the top of my water, then dragging down as we get down below. I'm kind of letting it blend in and be feathered, and that way it's just a very natural look. It's a very pragmatic way of doing things. So from there, we go back to a very cathartic way of applying paint, and that is just with an old square-headed brush, again doing more of a tapping motion in the trees. This is with a brighter green, and I'm only applying this to the edges of the trees that are going to be adopting light. This is going to make the trees look more three-dimensional, less cartoon-like, and it's going to ensure that we have more depth in our painting. If you want to render depth with something, again, you have a dark area, you have a medium color, you have a light color, and you have all of these ranges in between, but you essentially want a dark side.
And there you have it. That's his final picture. Two things to notice. First of all, at the bottom there on the left, it was very black at the beginning, and he painted over it in blue afterwards. That's something you can do with acrylic paint. Provided the paint's dry, you can put layer upon layer on top of it, and it won't make any difference. If you did that in watercolour, well, you may as well tear the paper up and throw it away. Well, that was a very quick painting. Only 10 minutes was all it took him to do it. Why he rushed it, I don't know, but he seems to think 10 minutes is a good tutorial. I think you can do a whole lot better than that. So have a go, see how you get on, see if you can do a moonlight painting. I'll bring this video along to the class on Saturday, so those of you who haven't got computers and things like that can watch it. But in the meantime, happy painting. See you soon, I hope.